Okay, during this video, I'm going to tell you what you should have in your slideshow. If you watch the VoiceThread video first, you'll know that what you do is you make your slideshow, you download it as a PDF, and then you upload it over to VoiceThread. So you want to really think about what's going to go on each slide, because once you download it as a PDF, you won't be able to change it. Sure, you could go change your slides, re-download it as a PDF, but you want to kind of make your final thing your final thing. So just be sure, about what you have. I guess I could put this here. Just kind of be sure about what you want on there and how you want it to look. So I'm going to go through my slides. I only have 6 slides. My expectation for you is you'll have like 10 or 12 slides, maybe even more, depending on what you're doing. Remember our project, and the goal for this project is that we are comparing and contrasting 3 different books. Okay? You're looking for a common element that runs through the books. That common element could be something really specific, like all of your books deal with soldiers, or all of your books deal with teenagers who have lost their parents. That's really specific. But it could also be something very broad, like all of your books deal with characters that are overcoming an obstacle, which is basically any book. Or all of your characters are dealing with love. It could be something like super broad like that. What your job is to do is to kind of find what that common thread is and find what that link is between your books. That's why you chose them. You went into this project knowing you were going to have to find a common thread, so you should have picked books that you knew could be related in some way. And your job then is to show the similarities, like how each author, how each book tackles that theme, how it affects the character, how it affects the plot, how it affects the outcome, how it affects the other characters, and then kind of compare it to the other books and contrast it to the other books. See if you find some similarities and differences in the way that happens, and try to come up with reasons why you think those similarities and differences are happening. I mean, is it because the protagonists and the books are so radically different? In one you have a young man, in another one you have an older woman, and in a third one you have a 10-year-old. Does that have something to do with it? Or you could even look at it in terms of, besides just gender and age, geography. Does it have anything to do with the setting and how the character was raised? And that's why they're approaching this topic in this way. So open your minds and open your possibilities to what are really the influencing factors in these characters' lives that are making them approach this theme, whatever your theme is, the way that they are. So think about all of those things. So let me kind of show you my slideshow. And if you are writing the paper, if you choose to write the paper, this information works for the paper as well, because you have to just write it in paragraphs instead of putting it in slides. You have that handout, and on that handout it has an outline of how you could do the paper version of this. So you can always have that out in front of you while you watch this video if you're choosing to do the paper one. All right, I'm going to put myself back in the corner. Alright, so my first slide is just an introduction slide. You need to have an introduction slide as well. You'll notice that I titled it Introduction. You don't need to title it Introduction. But somewhere on the slide, you have to do these 3 things. You have to introduce your viewers. That should be viewers. Can I change that right now? I can. Your viewers to your common theme. If you need to define it, do that. Okay. At some point in the introduction, you need to state the 3 books you're going to discuss along with their authors, like who wrote it. So you can't just tell me what their book name is. I also want to know who the author is. I want you to really think about presentation when you go through this, which is, you'll notice that I have, I put them in little boxes, and I changed the font and the color because I wanted you to see what they look like on the screen, and I want you to see what they look like in front of you. I suppose I could possibly present that. You can think about pictures. What kind of pictures do you want? I'm sure you can find the book jacket somewhere. Maybe even if your book was made into a movie, there's probably, photos of the cast, things like that. If there's important elements like items in your book, that might be something that you'd want to grab a picture of or pull a picture of. But think about the presentation. You want to make sure that whatever font that you choose, even if you decide to vary it up, that it isn't distracting, that it's readable. I tried to show you some ones, and sometimes they can be distracting. I always think this cursive-y looking one is kind of distracting. Oh, let me go back a spot. And I kind of always think, no, I kind of think this is a little distracting too, but I don't know, it's up to you kind of what you want to do and the way you want to put it together. So on your introduction, again, you don't have to have something that says introduction on it. That's just what my slide says. Yours can say whatever it needs to say. And in fact, you could even have more than one slide. Like maybe you wanted to have a slide that just talked about the theme, and then have a slide that showed you all 3 books, and then have a slide that has your claim on it. You do want to have a claim or a thesis, and that thesis should talk about what the theme is. And think about, now that you've seen that theme in all 3 books, why is it important? Why do you think all of these authors are writing about this thing? What's the so what factor, the significant factor to it? And kind of prove to me that what you think is significant about this idea is true to the characters in the book as well. It's going to be kind of a hard thing for you, I think. That's going to be the thinking part of this. Okay, I'm going to go on to my next slide. I just have this all in one slide. My expectation for you is that this would be between 2 to 3 slides, but you can do your presentation in 2 different ways. This is option 1. Option 1 then would be to have a slide or 2 that just talks about book 1 and not any of the other books. And then a slide or 2 that talks about book 2. And then a slide or 2 that talks about book 3. Let me fix that. That should talk about book 3. No! Come back. That talks about book 3. So, I put it all on 1 because, well, I'm lazy. And 2, I think it works better if I can have you see it all in one spot. In the slides, you need to talk about how that common theme is handled. So you'll talk about how it affects the protagonist, the overall plot, the other characters, talk about how it affects the ending, and you'll want to do that independently for all 3 books. Remember, you can add pictures in if you want to add pictures, if it goes with whatever you're talking about. That would work. So option 1 is, again, to talk about the books in their own sort of independent ways. Make sure, though, you are not, I'm going to put myself right in the middle because this is so important, you are not giving me a summary of these books. I don't want a summary. What I want is, how is that theme handled in your book? So in some cases, that might mean that you are telling me a little bit about what's happening in the book, but you're always framing it in the context of telling me why that theme or how that theme works in that scene or works in that part of the book or works with that character or is influencing the ending or is affecting the characters around the main character. Everything should be in the context of the theme. If you're not mentioning that theme very often, if you find yourself saying, I haven't even mentioned the theme yet, and I'm 2 pages into it, my typed essay, or I'm 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute in, that's a mistake. I don't want a summary, and it's so easy to slide into a summary if you don't keep that in mind. So make sure when you go through these books and you're talking about them, that you're talking about the theme that is common in all of them, and how and where and why you're seeing that in these books, okay? All right, put myself back in the corner here. Anybody dirty dancing? Don't put baby in the corner. Just me? Okay. So if you're still on option 1, continued, then, let me go back. Option 1 continued. In like 2 to 3 slides, what you'll need to do after, so you've gone through, right? Like you've gone through and you've talked about all of the books independently. Now you need to have a couple of slides where you talk about what the similarities are. So in like 2 to 3 slides, you'll spend time talking about what the similarities are. You'll pinpoint them. When you're writing these slides, I just want to caution you to like just write short sentences, maybe even phrases. Maybe I would hope that you're going to pull in a quote or two from the books that you're talking about that prove to me that these themes exist. And let your voice really tell the story. I don't want to look at these slides and read paragraphs and paragraphs of information. If you're going to write paragraphs for me, please write the paper. Don't do it in a slideshow. The slideshow should be short sentences, and then it's really up to you, like mine is right now, where I'm doing the majority of the talking, but you're not seeing any of those words on the screen in front of you. I'm just giving you bullet points of information. So when you make a slideshow, that's kind of the rule. Like you have to backfill it with all of the information, and the slideshow should just have the highlights and the bullet points. So if you're going to do the slideshow and you're going to talk about similarities and you're going to talk about differences, they should be, pretty short. You shouldn't have these long explanations in text. That's really what your job is to do. If you think you can't remember what to say, that's why those short phrases or sentences are guideposts. Or you can write it down and sort of read it, while you're going through. Make yourself like an outline or something so it'll remind you what you want to say. Okay, let's keep going. Then you'll have a conclusion. Now see, like this, that's a lot. My expectation would be that if you're going to have that much text on here, it's going to be a quote from your book, right? But I have it in here so you can read it. And it says, the conclusion is the time to wrap everything up. Try to attach some significance to your theme. You've just read 3 books that use it. So why is this an important theme in life? You can generalize this and give some examples. You can personalize it and give some examples. You can do a little of both. But in some way, you need to, attach significance. Why are all of these authors writing about this theme? I know you only read 3 books, but 3 random books and they all have the same idea in it. It must be important to our life in some way. And that's the hard part, is because you have to make some analysis there. You have to do a leap where you're going to come up with some new information that isn't from the books. It's from your brain, and it's from you thinking about this theme and thinking about it and why it's important to us as human beings, and what your opinion is on that and where we should go with that and why it's important. Okay? All right, next slide. You could do option 2. So option 2 is different than option 1. It still has an introduction, still has the same conclusion, except instead of breaking it out, book by book, you'll have just this book and then just that book and then just the 3rd book. What you'll do is you'll do all of the comparisons first, and you'll kind of talk about all the books at the same time. And then you'll do all of the contrasting elements next, and you'll talk about all the books at the same time. So you're not necessarily talking about the books independently like option 1. In this option 2, you have the ability to say, the author uses alienation in example book 1 when this happens, but it's different in example book 2. You have the ability to go back and forth between books. So this, depending on which way you want to do it, this has a lot of like bouncing around freedom to it that the other one doesn't. Notice I like 4 to 5 slides to compare, 4 to 5 slides to contrast, because when you're thinking about it, I want to know, what the differences are in the way these books have handled the theme, which is the same thing you should be doing in option 1. So that's just your different choice. And if you need to see it more in like an outline form, you can grab that sheet. Remember that handout? This lays out that second option for you and the first option for you. So if you want to see it in another format, you can look at that. Remember that the similarities and differences should relate to the common theme. I don't just want like random stuff about the books. I don't want you to tell me that, oh, one of them took place underwater and the other one in space, but had like nothing to do with the theme that runs through it. So I really need you to like think about it, and when the similarities and differences, they have to actually relate to the theme you're talking about here. So make sure you're doing that and you're staying on track and you're not just like randomly throwing in similarities and differences. That goes for option 1 too. That's just kind of a side note. Okay, so that's my little slideshow I've got going on here. those are just my slides. That's kind of tells you again how to do the book project. So, you can do the paper, you can do the video, yeah, whatever you feel like doing. Okay.